To recap, I had explained previously the circumstances in which Income, the co-op, proposed to convert its legal status from a co-op into a corporate status. There were advantages that it felt it could avail themselves of, such as, for instance, there were limitations on the extent to which dividends could be declared by a co-op, and that itself made it less attractive for investors, for strategic partners to come in to work with Income. It also needed the ability to broaden its capital base. I think there's some debate about what we mean by capital buffers, capital resiliency. I'll address that in a moment. But what is important to bear in mind in relation to Ms. Her's question on representations and what was discussed in the context of the corporatization and the exemption, Income said very clearly it wanted to do better in the insurance business. It emphasized that it would continue to do its social mission as before, based on a quote I read earlier, and that it would only change its legal form as far as its business was concerned. What's also important to bear in mind in the context of the exemption is that Section 88 applies, as I explained, in the context of a social cooperative seeking to wind up its business, to cease its business, stop altogether. And then after paying off its debts and accounting for other charges, it will have surplus, or it may have surpluses, which then comes into the consolidated fund. That's the raison d'etre behind Section 88. In the context of Income, the cooperative, the raison d'etre or purpose is quite different. First, it was, whilst being liquidated and wound up, it was not ceasing its business. In fact, on the contrary, it was trying to do its business better in a corporate vehicle that would allow it to reach out to strategic partners, access capital, and so on, to do its business better. So it was fundamentally not winding up its business, not stopping, and therefore, on that basis, it needed to then say, I would also have these surpluses, which I had accumulated before, brought into the new entity. And it was on that basis that we granted the exemption for the surpluses to also flow through into the new corporate entity. Ms. He also asked whether there's a link between surpluses and social mission. As I explained earlier, I think we have to give a degree of flexibility to the entity charged with that social mission to decide how to apply it. And in the context of Income as it stood post-corporatization, its majority shareholder was NTUC Enterprise, also a cooperative. It also had a number of other smaller minority shareholders which were also cooperatives. In that context, we left it to them to decide how you want to carry out your social mission, how you would deploy the surpluses. You may offer migrant workers insurance, you might offer mental wellness insurance, and so on. It's something that I think we need to give them a broad remit over, given especially that they've converted into a corporate entity, a point that I made on Monday as well. You can't, on the one hand, say you can corporatize, but on the other hand, you still have to behave as if you're a cooperative entity. So I hope that answers Ms. Her's questions around the surpluses and the link to the social mission. I would add, sir, that it is not for me to say how Income ought to have structured its transactions with Allianz or with any other party. What we do know is in this present arrangement, for the reasons I've set out, which I'll briefly summarize in a moment, we were not comfortable that after this transaction, given the context in which it was done, that Income would be able to carry on with its social mission. The reasons we came round to this view, if I may reiterate, were the capital reduction occurring so soon after the exemption, the amount that was involved, the fact that there was no arrangement within the terms of the present transaction which would safeguard or ring-fence the advancement of Income's social mission, nor were there any structural protections in the terms of the proposed transaction that would allow us to have comfort that its social mission would be protected. And we were also not clear what other adjustments or changes Income might be able to make thereafter to its portfolio, whether it would serve this area of underserved in the insurance business, trim its portfolio, change it altogether, or reduce. There were also no controls there. So cumulatively, these factors, taken in the context of this transaction, where Income would cede majority control, were the reasons why we felt, in this case, this was not acceptable. As to what is acceptable, it is not for us to speculate. And if the parties, as they have indicated publicly, wish to reevaluate, reconsider, we will consider that when they have structured any new arrangements.